On this episode of Locked On Canadiens, yes, the Canadiens won in overtime, but I still hate it.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to episode 1193 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Doing that supports the show and ensures you do not miss an episode. We are free and available 5 days a week, just about everywhere podcasts can be found. My name is Ian Boisvert. I'm joined by Laura Saba, and today our show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Laura, Montreal picks up 3 out of 4 points in their back-to-back by dropping the Columbus Blue Jackets in overtime, but why do I still feel angry?
It feels like 2 terrible losses in a row. It feels like that Vegas game.
Yeah, it really does. I called it before the game. I put a post on Blue Sky that was essentially, I feel like this is the most likely outcome, and that's what happened.
It's exactly what happened.
Yeah, no, it's not often in the podcast game we get out in front of these things. I say that all the time, but we nailed this one. In reality, how do you feel at the end of that game? There's some big storylines to take out of that one.
Mhm.
We'll get those thoughts. I have a segment in our second segment. I've seen enough things where my opinions are now completely formulated and will not change, which of course is part of the joke. And then we're a quarter way through the season. We want to quickly just kind of recap the things that we've seen so far. So let's start, Laura, with the game. What are you feeling at the end of that? What are your big takeaways from Montreal's win over the Columbus Blue Jackets?
That Uri Slafkovsky is back.
So
obviously. Why is Brendan Gallagher fighting? That's another one. I want to know.
Brendan Gallagher got his hand caught in the cookie jar on that one. That was Brendan Gallagher's fault. He spears Zach Werenski in what the announcers would call the midsection. It's the nuts. Sorry, that's where he got him.
Yeah.
And then Werenski gives him 3 slashes. Gallagher turns around in the most nonchalant way possible and starts fighting him. Hilarious. This team is impossible to predict what they're going to do on the ice on any given moment. So at least they're entertaining.
He's like 75 years old. He should not be going around.
He is 30 or 40 years old. He does not need this. Yeah. But the Slafkovsky point is so well met. They needed him to step up. The lineup came out and he was on the second line, which was a big step up from the previous night where he did not play the last 8 and change in the third period and overtime.
Interesting, because it felt like he was being stapled to the bench, and then now is he being rewarded or challenged? That's the thing. Right?
You know what my thought was when I saw the lineup? I saw Slav on the second line. I went, well, he'll be rested. He'll be fresh. There's not much else you could say about that, but he was excellent. He was making great plays up and down the ice.
Yeah. And he got rewarded for it with goal, right? So it's just, it felt at times that he was carrying the game on his back. He looked like, and we have to remember that this is the second night of a back-to-back, including travel. So this result is actually quite positive. I don't know why we're so mad about it.
I think it's just because the whole game was so anxious for some reason. Montreal didn't have a lead until the third period.
Yeah. That's the first time this season, Ian. Bring out your stat. I don't want to.
They were 0-9-3 when getting scored on first. They have finally broken that. They are now on the board whenever their opponent scores. Now, I will say that the last time these two teams met, they were both in that boat where Columbus and Montreal had both not won a game where their opponents have scored first. So now Montreal was the last one left in the league, and they ended up taking this one, which was very, very nice. Definitely needed. As I was watching the game, I thought, man, we need to see more out of Nick Suzuki. He's just not. It's just something's just not clicking there. And I was headed into overtime thinking this was going to end poorly.
Same.
And because overtime's bad, listen to our last episode if you haven't already. We kind of teed off on the idea of 3-on-3 overtime. And then Nick Suzuki makes me look like a big dum-dum by coming in and making a really good play to score the goal. He gets the shot, and then you can see him choke up on his stick so he can just kind of whack at the rebound and put it in. Really smart play. Columbus got caught flat-footed.
Yeah.
But he scored. How for you, were you watching the same Nick Suzuki I was? That he was kind of struggling?
Yeah, the last few games actually, not just this game,
Yeah.
right? But what I saw in that is that he capitalized on an unfortunate, it wasn't even necessarily a mistake, it was just sort of an unfortunate circumstance. He capitalized on it. So maybe it's the killer instinct coming back, because that's not something that we've seen out of him or very many members of this team as of late. And I thought
Yeah.
he did a really good job. I thought he was patient. He seized the opportunity, but he was patient. He knew what he was doing. And like I think also like there was no one there for him to pass to, so he kind of had to take the shot, because otherwise I've been so annoyed with him not shooting this whole, like every single time he does it now. I mark it down and I'm like, this made me mad, Nick Suzuki. You need to atone for this.
Yeah, and it's their first overtime win of the season as well. So for the captain to sort of bump that slump as well is pretty good for Montreal. I do think that, and we'll sort of get into it in the second segment because I have some thoughts on defensemen. Um, One of the defensemen I really enjoyed in this game, I know he kind of got turnstiled on the Chinnikov goal. Jaden Struble is a jerk to play against. I love watching this guy play. Yes, he made a mistake, but more often than not, he makes up for those mistakes. He just trucks people. It's really, the thought I had in the game was, if he's on this team when they are in a playoff series, he's going to throw a hit that derails a series. Like that's
Yeah,
the kind of guy that he can be,
yeah.
because he's just so dang strong. Like I cannot believe how strong this guy is. Do you get the same impression from Jaden Struble?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I've had like, because I used to have our former co-host Scott. Um, if you listen to yesterday's episode, you want to catch the end of that one. But yes, he had been like talking about Jaden Struble's strength from day one, right? So it was like drummed in my head, and so like when he showed up, I was like, oh, he wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was like it wasn't exaggerated. You know what I mean? Like it was he's every inch or every pound or whatever way you want to put it, the physical like specimen that the Canadians need, right? And so I think for me, he's a player that I'm really high on. I didn't think that his skill level was was where it was going to be or where it ended up being. I'm losing my words now, but and it's we still have another episode, and I have to do that one by myself. I don't know how we're
Yeah,
going to do
speak for yourself. I have a holiday. I have a day off, so that's on
that.
you.
But yeah, so Jaden Struble, like there's something about the way that he plays that gives me joy. Um,
Yeah.
like I love watching him like get in people's faces. It's really annoying.
Yeah, it would suck to play against him. I'm glad
Mhm.
he's on our team. He's that kind of player where
Yeah,
I just see him rock guys all over the ice, and he does. I would say just about every one of them is clean. Like we're not talking about a dirty player, a guy who
right.
throws hits that are irresponsible or just outright not cool.
Yeah,
He's leveling guys, and he's doing it in a sense that he's doing it to dislodge a puck. He's doing it to make a play, not just make a statement. That happens to
right.
be a side effect of it.
He's not taking himself out of the game for the hit, which is something that annoys me a lot about physical defensemen sometimes, is they'll just like forget the game that's going on the ice, and they're going to be like, I'm going to hit that guy.
Yeah, it becomes too much of their brand, the Alexei
Yeah,
Emelin disease, where
exactly.
you just need to run over a guy every 15 seconds, or you feel like you're not contributing.
Yeah.
Which Jaden Struble can do a lot more than that. I found that penalty killing, he's been excellent. Caden Gooley on the penalty kill has been excellent. And one last guy I did want to highlight because he doesn't get his flowers enough. Yoel Armia on the penalty kill has been a monster these last few games. I mean, I forget what was it. I don't know if it was last game or the game before. I think it was last game. He just put on a clinic where he just kind of skated around with the puck the entire penalty kill and made sure that the other team couldn't get it. He killed off like 45 seconds on his own.
Yeah.
That's like he's irreplaceable to them on this penalty kill right now.
I have really appreciated Yoel Armia this year in a way that I'd never expected, right? Like now it's getting to a point like, for years we were like, get that contract off this roster, get him off. And now I'm like, no, let's keep him.
Yeah, and for that reason, he's going to be very attractive to somebody who's going to make the playoffs. He's going to be a guy that you can plug in your bottom six and play on the penalty kill and not really worry about him all that much. He's a very low maintenance hockey player at this point in his career, which is really, I'm happy for him because we are a year removed from him having just the worst time with hockey, and he really rebuilt his confidence and rebuilt himself. The Canadians had, I believe, a sports a psychologist talking with him. So like he had worked through the things that he needed to work through, and it clearly paid off because he's playing some of the like offensively. Yes, he's a limited player there. Defensively, one of the best, if not the best, forwards on the Montreal Canadiens. So hats off to Yoel Armia. He definitely deserves.
Player.
Yeah, two-way player for sure. You need those. You need those to win, and they needed him tonight, and he came through. All right. We are going to move on to our second segment where I'm going to talk about things I have seen enough of. My opinions are formulated. They will not be changed, and we'll get into that in just a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. I love being in the middle of the action, whether that's taking in a concert or enjoying a night at the rink. It's just more fun being there. The place where you can go to get to the events you want to see is Gametime. We're big fans of Gametime here thanks to their all-in pricing. There's a setting in the app that you can toggle on, so Gametime tells you exactly how much you'll be paying to get in. No hidden fees. Plus, with their seat views, you know what kind of action you'll be able to see. And with their lowest price guarantee, you know you're getting the best deal for your tickets. It's for all these reasons that I went to Gametime to secure tickets to the Habs game against the Islanders in October. And even though the Canadiens lost, I had a great night out with some friends in some really great seats at an even better price. Take out the guesswork of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Laura, we are back, and it is time to make some bold statements about the current state of your Montreal Canadiens. I sent a text to you and Scott in the middle of this game that started with the phrase, "I've seen enough." And there's a few things here that are kind of positive. Mm-hmm. There's there's one or two that are negative. I want to start with, let's start with one that can go both ways here. I've seen enough. This team needs Mike Matheson. Your thoughts on that, that statement so far?
Absolutely agreed with you. I know there's so many people that will disagree with us, but there's no transition game without Mike Matheson, right? Like, and Lane Hudson, God love him. He's trying. He's amazing. But this team, like, they're not moving up the ice without Mike Matheson.
Yeah. No,
nobody else is doing this. Like, it's not happening.
You look at the pairings, the pairings that they started the game with midway through the second period, they were in the blender. Like, I think Marty had seen kind of enough of what he was seeing. Like the Barron and Struble pairing was on for 2 goals against. Both of those guys made a mistake on either one of those goals. I don't know that a lot of these pairings work without Mike Matheson in this lineup. So they need him. They just need him. He fills a role that nobody else on this team can fill. And for what it's worth, power play 1 hasn't looked all that much better with Lane Hudson on it. Like, it's not, they moved their first power play tonight. They moved the puck a little bit better, a little faster. Mm-hmm. But they also didn't double shift Lane Hudson on that power play. He came off after the first power play wave, unlike against Utah where he got double shifted and it still didn't work. So I think I've seen enough. They need Mike Matheson.
They absolutely need Mike Matheson.
Yeah, I don't think that there's much argument there here. All right, second one. I've seen enough. Justin Barron is not it. I do not think this guy has a future with this team. I don't know if that's too hot of a take at this point, but where are you at on JB?
I keep wanting to see something out of him that I'm not seeing. He doesn't fit. I don't necessarily think he's a terrible player or anything like that. He does not fit, and I feel really bad, but he does not fit.
Yeah, and this was his 105th game in the National Hockey League. Over that time, most of those games with the Canadiens, he just has not made any meaningful progress. The mistakes that we saw with Justin Barron on day one are the mistakes we're seeing from him now. He has not taken the steps that we've seen from Jaden Struble or from Arbor Xhekaj. I think the reason they're holding on to him is hoping maybe he figures it out in the coming weeks, months, year. But also, just look at the right side on defense. What other option do they have on most nights? On most nights, they're playing 4 left-handed defensemen and 2 righties, if they can. On most nights, it'll even be 5 and 1 because they just don't have right shot defensemen. Gooley's playing on the right side a ton. That's not working out very much. Matheson has played over there. They had Gooley back on the right tonight to cover so that Lane Hudson had somebody to play with and he could play his natural side. I wonder how much of this is a sunk cost fallacy because they traded Arturi Lehkonen and they got a second-round pick for this guy, for Justin Barron. Do you think there's any truth to that? Like that's the only reason he's still here is because, well, we spent so much capital to get him. We have to figure this out.
I think so. I think there's a little bit of that. And I don't think that that's necessarily unique to this team, right?
No.
It's just, and it's also because what do you do with him at this point? Like if you were contending or you were in danger of losing a playoff spot or something like that, you probably move faster on this. But the fact that they're just kind of treading water in this rebuild right now, I don't necessarily think that it's worth making a move unless it's the right one. Like who's going to want him at this point, right? What are they going to give for him? Right?
Yeah, people are worried like he would need waivers to go down to the AHL. Was someone going to claim him? Like maybe.
I don't know that they will.
Yeah, I would I take a lot of flack for saying that I think Caden Primo would get claimed. I don't think that Justin Barron is getting claimed. I don't think anybody sees much value in this player at this point in time, and they've got no reason to other than he's young, he shoots right, he can skate pretty well.
And he's good in the AHL.
Yes. He's kind of one of those tweener players. Like he's probably too good for the American Hockey League, but he's definitely not an NHLer at this point in time. I just especially his offensive zone plays whatever. Like he's always had that kind of reliability in that part of his game. But defensively, he's a space cadet, man. Like I just don't know. I don't know what he's thinking most of the time. He took a penalty late in the third that almost killed them because he just got caught flat-footed and just put his stick out and hooked a guy. Like it's really difficult to watch him play at this point. So I've seen enough here. I think I don't think that I just don't think that we've seen enough improvement to think that more improvement is coming. Honestly, like there's been no progression to assume further progression, unfortunately. Last one, I've seen enough. Emil Heineman is an NHLer. This guy should not come out of the lineup when Raphael Harvey-Pinard or Patty Laine is ready to come back. I don't know what they need to do to keep Emil Heineman in this lineup, but this dude does. They have to. This dude does so much stuff that guys that like hockey people love, right?
Yeah. And I think, like for me, like it's because of who they traded for him. It was like Kent Hughes' first big trade. There were a lot of naysayers about it at the time. I feel like Emil Heineman's somebody where people are kind of like primed to be disappointed in him. But maybe all along those little things add up to something huge for the Montreal Canadiens. And I think, this turned out okay. Like again, it's not a Tyler Toffoli level return. And I know there was picks involved and everything, but I feel like he's somebody where, before the season started, I was like, he's going to be playing in the AHL all season. And now I would die for him.
Yeah. I would push back a little bit on the return of that trade. Because what did Calgary really get out of it? Like a minute and a half of Tyler Toffoli. He wasn't there long. Then they flipped him to New Jersey. Now he's in San Jose.
Yeah.
I honestly think the Canes, in retrospect, did pretty well there. And, to the defense of Emil Heineman, who at that point, that was his second time being traded. He was probably down. And I think Kent Hughes alluded to this. Like, yeah, you've been traded twice, but you've been traded for twice. 2 teams have decided they wanted you. They thought that you were valuable to acquire in a trade. And you start to look at his play now and you understand what they might have seen in him back then. the way that he throws the body is really, really good. They need somebody like that as like an energy line player. But then the goal he scored against Columbus, he did an Eric Cole. He came down the left wing, put his shoulder down, and went to the net, and it worked out for him.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that they need more guys on this team to be able to do. It's like, it's basically just him and Josh Anderson. Those are the two guys who can do that. And only one of them's doing that.
And one of them has a better shot too.
Yeah.
I also think, he's definitely, turnovers are precious for you. So he's definitely doing well on that front. I've been monitoring since one of our listeners pointed it out. They didn't even point it out. They challenged you on it, which I thought was really
And they were right.
They were right.
I tip my cap to you. The many hats I wear on the show, they are all tipped to you.
So he brings a lot of value, and that's the thing. It's like he's not flashy, he's not going to be your top line player, but he's the kind of player that makes your underlying numbers better. It makes your numbers better. When he's around, good things are happening.
I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they keep him in this lineup with two forwards coming back, but they gotta figure it out, because I think they will miss him if he comes out of the lineup. All right, we have to move on. We're going to take a look at the first quarter mark of the season for your Montreal Canadiens and try to figure out how we feel about it. And we'll get into that in just a minute. PSA for anyone who rents. If you haven't heard of Built, you're about to thank us. Earning points on rent is now a reality when you pay your rent through Built. You don't even have to check with your landlord to start earning points that you can use towards flights, hotel stays, fitness classes, and even your next rent payment. Let me break it down for you. There's no cost to join Built, and as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and on your everyday spending. Built points can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, and even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world where you can redeem your Built points towards. Points can also be redeemed towards a future rent payment and unique experiences that only Built members can access. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, why not? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to jointbuilt.com/lockedonnhl. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnhl. Make sure to use our URL so they know that we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl to start earning points on your rent payments today. All right, Laura, we are headed into our final stretch here. And we sort of let the quarter mark of the season go by without really mentioning it. I sort of mentioned it in passing when we talked about Kirby Dach and the season that he's having.
But it's American Thanksgiving.
It is American Thanksgiving. And that is a great point, because that is the made up line that we have in this league, where if you're not within like 2 points of the playoffs, you're probably not going to make it. I haven't checked the standings yet, but I would imagine the Canadiens are not in that race at this point in time. Is that surprising to you? Is that disappointing to you? Like, how do you feel coming into this point of the season?
It's funny because the result is not disappointing or surprising, like where they are in the standings. It's the journey that's been disappointing. It's the ways that they've been losing that have been disappointing. I honestly thought that this year they would put up better fights against just much better teams, and just, the talent deficit would just not win. And instead, what's been happening is you've seen them trip all over themselves and shoot themselves in the foot, or as Marty likes to say, throw up all over themselves.
It's a great visual.
Every game, right? And I'm not seeing what I wanted to see. This should have been a fun team, a scrappy team, a pesky team. I'm not seeing any pesk.
No, you were hoping that this team would play spoiler a lot of the nights, and they just kind of aren't.
No, they feel like a threat, and they aren't.
Yeah, and they've shown us that they can, though. That's the frustrating part, right? Is we see glimpses of it. We see little pieces of it. That game against Edmonton, that's how we kind of wanted this season to go, right? They won that game, and they dominated that game, and it wasn't just Sam Montembeault standing on his head. Yes, he got a shutout, but the Canadiens played very, very well that game. They made life really hard for McDavid and Draisaitl. Those guys did not do anything that night, and then walked into Ottawa the following night and put up a boatload of points against the Senators. So, which I mentioned the Senators only to say that the Canadiens and the Senators are tied currently. The Sens have played one fewer game, so they're technically up on the Canadiens, but Montreal's 8-11-3 at the moment. They're 5 points out of a playoff spot. So that American Thanksgiving line, it does not seem like, and maybe this is news to some of you, the Canadiens are probably not going to make the playoffs this year. I hope that I'm not breaking that news to you. Yeah, we're very negative here on this show. That's all we do is talk about how this team is bad, and we hate Arbor Xhekaj. Remember how fun that was? Which we don't. He's been really, really good this year. I think that's one of the better stories to come out of the beginning of this season is that Arbor Xhekaj was kind of in the doghouse to start the season in the preseason, just doing a lot of dumb stuff. And he's now made himself a very stable part of this defense.
Yeah. One of the only stable things. One of the only reliable players on this team.
Yeah. A guy that you kind of know what you're getting out of on a night in, night out basis. It's him.
And he doesn't disappoint.
Struble. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even you can't even really say that about Mike Matheson at this point, who we love, but like we're coming off of a stretch from him where he didn't look all that great. Now it kind of looks like he was playing hurt, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's my theory.
Right. But we have to judge what we see on the ice, right? And he hadn't looked all that great. The goaltending situation through the quarter mark of the season, it's highs and lows for Sam Montembeault, and it's mostly just lows for Caden Primo. It's funny, he just won a game against Columbus, and
I have no faith in him.
no one's really talking about Caden Primo in a game that he won because the Canadiens didn't really need him to win that game, right? Like they could have. You talk about replacement level. That was replacement level goaltending from Caden Primo. He made one save at the very end of the game, at the end of regulation. That was like, okay, he just kind of got them a point.
Yeah.
But other than that, he was kind of just there.
He was there. He was pretty much there. I thought our good friend Jay Foster of Locked On Blue Jackets was talking about how congratulations, Caden Primo, on your Vezina performance of the night, Vezina-worthy performance of the night, which I understand where Jay was coming from on that one.
Sure.
But I responded that like Caden Primo's not even capable of that, ironically.
Yeah. He's capable of that in spurts. We'll see it for like a period where it's like, oh my God, he's unbeatable. And the next period, someone goes through his chest somehow. Like, I don't understand how this happens.
Like 2 pucks go in.
Yeah. Thinking about just, the beginning of this season, Cole Caulfield, the start that he got off to, he'd been cold for a little while. He gets back on the score sheet tonight. I think that was goal 13, which is very fitting, playing in Columbus. He scored his 13th while he switched to number 13 right under the 13 banner that's up there for Johnny Gaudreau. The start that Cole Caulfield is off to,
yes,
it seems like this is more or less what we maybe not expected, but hoped for, right? We were hoping he would take this step in his goal scoring acumen.
Yes, and I think what happened was that it's happening in fits and spurts, so that's making us a bit frustrated. Whereas consistently, he wasn't going to be scoring every single game, right? Like maybe he was going to be scoring every 2 games, and so that like little break that he took in between, I don't know which game and now, it seems more frustrating in context. But I think he's going to be fine. I think he's still on pace for a really good season this year, and I think he's going to shut people up. The one I'm a little bit more concerned about is Nick Suzuki.
Yes, I've been concerned about him the last few games. He scored. Maybe he's the kind of guy that, okay, I got on the board. Maybe things go a little bit better for him moving forward.
Yeah.
But I'm right there with you. They need more out of him if they want to be more competitive. That's because the long and short of it is, if Doc and Slafkovsky aren't playing well, they can be demoted to the 4th line.
Yeah.
You cannot hide from Nick Suzuki playing poorly. Like, there's nowhere to put him. There's nowhere to put him, and there's no one to put in his place.
Exactly.
So they need him. They need more out of him. All right. Let's hit our trivia and then head out of here. The last question was the last 2 games against brand new NHL franchises, the Seattle Kraken and the Vegas Golden Knights. The first games that the Canadiens played against them, one player from Montreal had points in both of those games. Laura, you had the answer. Who is it?
It was Brendan Gallagher.
It was Brendan Gallagher. He had a goal against the Knights, and he had an assist on the lone goal against the Seattle Kraken in that first game. I have a question for today. Maybe it'll wait until I come back next week to unearth it, but I love these who scored the first goal against this franchise questions. So we played Columbus tonight. Who scored the first goal for the Montreal Canadiens against the Columbus Blue Jackets? The Canadiens were shut out in their first ever game against Columbus 2-0. So it came in their second game in the following year, because that was back when Columbus was in the Western Conference, and they only played Western Conference teams once some of the time. League never made any sense. So who scored the first Montreal Canadiens goal against the Columbus Blue Jackets? You get the question right, put it in the comments. We will pin whoever gets it right first. Before I head out of here, though, I am reminded when we spent a lot of the night talking about Johnny Gaudreau and how he should still be here. It's American Thanksgiving. I want to remind our American listeners to drive safely and do not drive drunk this week. It's a very stupid and selfish thing to do. Find another way home. People deserve to spend this week with their families and not worry about this sort of thing. So don't drive drunk. Find another way home. That's going to do it for us today on this episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thanks so much for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, head on over to Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We are making the jump to Blue Sky, or should I say we have made the jump fully to Blue Sky. Come hang out with us there. We're Locked On Canadiens. Laura's at the Active Stick. I'm at Maybe It's Ian. I am off tomorrow, so send in your mailbag questions to Locked On Canadiens. Laura will be running through all of those solo. I honestly can't wait to listen to it. I get a podcast back this week, so very much looking forward to that. Thanks for listening. Laura, we'll see you tomorrow. I will see you next week.